Hey guys, Bob here, and today we are going to be rating all of Vecna's add-ons. I made a video about this a while ago, but obviously that shit's outdated now, and especially since Vecna and his add-ons got changed, I wanted to make a little update. If you want to know, I'm not really going to go over what his add-ons do too much. If you want to know that, either go check the wiki or go check my previous video on the add-ons. I'll give a brief overview, but enough yapping. Let's rate some add-ons. First of all, we got they didn't buff this add-on, Lamau, the bottom tier. If you don't know what goes in this, play some more Vecna. It's Tattered Headbands. Tattered Headband is still by far the worst add-on. It increases your Flight of the Damned by 4 meters, so instead of going 26 meters, it'll go 30 meters. Why is this bad? Because you're never gonna need the extra 4 meters unless you're going a snipe specific build where the 4 meters might come in useful. You are almost never getting use out of this add-on. You don't want to snipe with Flight of the Damned a lot of the time, and if you are, you're definitely not gonna snipe 30 meters, let alone 26 or 26 meters, let alone 30. Usually they'll get hit if like the longest you want to snipe is around 20 meters. This extra distance really doesn't help you all that much. You'd rather have like literally any other add-on. The only hits you'll ever get with this is, again, if you're running a build or if you hit somebody completely accidentally. But do you really want an add-on just in case you hit someone accidentally? I mean, if you're funny, you could, honestly. And it is kind of funny with some with a book-based build centered around snipes. But at the end of the day, this add-on is still terrible. The range is a non-factor in most of your games. All right, so going up, these add-ons are not Tattered Headbands, so they're automatically a little bit better, but they're still not the best. So first, we got Ring of Telekinesis. Ring of Telekinesis makes you vault faster after you cast Mage-Chant on an upright pallet. First of all, you heard that right, upright pallet. This add-on does not work if you lift up a pallet. You have to hold up the pallet, which frankly is a really stupid condition in the first place for such a mid effect. I believe it's like 10%. Yeah, so you get 10% for 10 seconds. They buffed this add-on, by the way. It used to be 8 seconds. This is not the buff that it needed. A lot of the time when you're using Mage-Hand, you're not going to vault a window afterwards. The only places where this would be useful is Shack and Jungle Gyms. Most other loops don't have a conveniently placed window right after a pallet. And even then, you don't even want to vault the window. Vecna does struggle in these loops, especially in Larry's, but vaulting the window is just not worth it, especially 10% when you could be running something like Bamboozle, which Vecna's already pretty good with. This add-on is just terrible. I mean, it does something, I guess, but 10% with a very niche proc condition is just not, it's not it. All right, next up, we have Crystal Ball, which increases your Killer Instinct after Dispelling Sphere by 1 second. This add-on was actually kind of slept on, but they made this add-on partially base kit, and now it's just terrible. Now, I believe survivors are revealed for 5 seconds, so this add-on becomes completely redundant, because 5 seconds is more than enough. 1 second of tracking might help in a short amount of circumstances, but a lot of the time, the Dispelling Sphere is detecting enough to where you know where the survivor is going after they get dispelled. And 1 second really isn't going to help that much. Maybe if you're in loops, that 1 extra second could help, but you would rather run a different add-on that actually does more things in more circumstances. This add-on, again, they made it partially base kit, so I can't blame it, but I would prefer the effect to have been changed because 1 second of extra detection really isn't that much. Anyways, that's enough for the leave them in your inventory. These add-ons next are going to be at least somewhat usable. First off, also these are ordered. So next, we're going with Ornate Horn. Now, I'm not going to get comments about this. It's a good add-on with Book of Vile Darkness. If you were not running Book of Vile Darkness, this add-on, this is my hot take, is complete dookie booty. Okay? It effectively, like, does nothing except slightly widen your skeletons. Why would you want to widen your skeletons? Well, first of all, you can zone survivors a bit easier because the line is thicker. If the survivor crouches, they're going to have to move more distance before they're out of the skeletons. And also, it does add an extra skeleton, which does lower the chance that a survivor can dodge between them. I think. I actually have no idea how that works. But even then, it's still not that good. Most of the time, you're going to be using Flight of the Damned to zone. Even if they dodge it, they're still zoned into you. And also, the amount of width it creates is absolutely not worth it. a lot of the time they're still going to be crouched by the time the skeletons, you know, go ahead and fly. So it's not even going to zone them that much. And also it removes your center skeleton, which makes it harder to aim a singular skeleton. Like if you're using Flight of the Damned out of a window to like snipe a window, it's going to be harder to do that because instead of using, you know, the center of your screen, you now have to shift it a little bit to the right. And that's just inconvenient. And this add-on really doesn't do all that much to justify that. So, in my opinion, it's down here. Unless you're running Book, of course, then you can probably throw it up in Vecna's Grand Arsenal. Because Book is miserable to use without Ornate. Still strong. But without Book, it's just don't run it. Alright, next up with a Fall from Grace is Ring of Spell Storing, lowering all your spell cooldowns by 1 second. This add-on used to be really good. It used to be Vecna's best add-on by far. And then it went to a bit mid-tier, and now it's down all the way here in the bottom 5. Why is it in the bottom 5? I thought that cooldown was supposed to be nice. It is nice, but 1 second is such a minuscule value that, in my opinion, it's not even worth it. This add-on is basically only getting value if you're casting spells within the singular second that this add-on provides. Otherwise, it literally does nothing. And in my opinion, when this add-on was 2 seconds before the nerf, it had a use because 2 seconds. The difference between having your spell now and in 2 seconds is a pretty big jump. 1 second is pretty close to nothing. And it just doesn't do all that much. Yeah, it's still an okay add-on, but compared to what Vecna's other add-ons do, it definitely doesn't buff his kit enough anymore. Again, it only really does something if you're casting within that 1 second period, which just isn't realistic in my opinion. And waiting 1 second is not a big deal. And yes, sometimes waiting that 1 second will screw you over. And that's when this add-on would provide value. But compared to his other add-ons and when they provide value, I think this add-on is deserving of its place. All right, next up with another Fall from Grace. It's the Potion of Speed, decreasing your post-fly fatigue by, I believe, 0.15 seconds. This add-on was absolutely gutted, along with Vecna's post-fly cooldown. Instead of being 0.3 seconds like it was before, it's been halved. And let me tell you, as someone who religiously ran this add-on before, it feels so much worse, and it barely helps you. 0.15 seconds is a lot of time. It's definitely a good amount of time to cut down, but I just don't feel like it gets you the hits that you should be getting, especially before. I would like to go over a concept called fly jump scaring. Usually, the lower the cooldown of the reason Potion works so well is because the post fly cooldown was already so low, and making it lower effectively makes it so the survivors are jump scared. They have little time to react. However, if you increase the post fly cooldown by a bit, all of a sudden it's getting less value because the survivors have more time to react. The less time they have to react, the higher the graph goes. It's like an exponential graph. The more time the survivor has to react, the graph goes plummeting down. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if you add Potion of Speed into the equation because the survivor can still react. Whereas if it's already pretty difficult to react to, then you make it super, super impossible to react to. That's just not a thing anymore. That's just not a thing anymore. And let me tell you, as someone who tried running this add-on after the changes, I don't feel that much of a difference. It certainly does make a difference. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. But is it really better than running most of his other add-ons? In my opinion, it's not. But if you like the feeling of Potion of Speed, please run it. It feels nice sometimes. It just doesn't feel as good as it did before, and it certainly doesn't feel good to me. All right, coming up next is actually an add-on I'm starting to run a lot more. It's the Lantern of Revealing. Lantern of Revealing reveals the auras of survivors that are missed by your skeletons. Missed in air quotations, because I've had it proc a lot when I hit the survivor. It's a bit shaky. It procs like sometimes. Now this add-on actually isn't the worst. The part I don't like about it is how, one, it basically only works on tall loops, and two, it kind of, incentivizes missing, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But it's a good failsafe. It's honestly not that bad. Just there's a lot of better add-ons. It can let you get mind games after you use Flight of the Damned, which is always nice. And again, on high wall places, being able to see the survivor's aura, especially after you zone them with Flight of the Damned, because if you zone them with Flight of the Damned and they crouch, you still get to see their aura because you technically missed. So that can be useful. Yeah, that's basically it. Or I guess if you snipe someone, if you're on an elevation and you snipe someone, like let's say on Grim Pantry main building, then it can also be useful because if you hit them, obviously you hit them, but if you miss them, all of a sudden you're seeing their aura. You can use fly to catch up. It has some practical applications, surprisingly enough, but it just doesn't do enough, I guess. You would rather hit your skeletons, or you'd rather use your skeletons to zone so you can just M1 them anyways. A lot of the time you're not going to need this add-on. Good effect, but just not necessary in my opinion. All right, last for this tier is one that I am a personal fan of. It is Trickster's Glove. Trickster's Glove was nerfed with the patch, making it 0.3 seconds of extra hold time, and this add-on kind of has a higher kind of gets more powerful the stronger the survivors are, because they know your mage hand timing. So screwing with that by 0.3 seconds is actually really good. And okay, a concept I want to go over is extending your mage hand time. So let's say a loop takes 3 seconds to go around, and I use mage hand. So they use 3 seconds to go around the loop. Now they're back at the pallet and there's 1 second of mage hand. What do? If they wait there by the pallet, they have to wait 1 second before dropping it, and 1 second is a lot of time. But if they don't want to drop it, or if they can't drop it, then they have to go back around the loop, which takes another 3 seconds. And by that time, mage hand has already expired in 1 second. So you basically get 6 seconds of mage hand. This extends the duration of which you can play that. You can play for that. So it adds a 0.3 buffer time to where the survivor can drop the pallet on you. So you have more leniency in when you can use mage hand. And you have more leniency in which you can use mage hand to guaranteed get the hit. Like if you're close enough to the survivor, you mage hand, you hold W, no matter what they do, they get hit. This lets you play the palette a lot better, usually fillers with mage hand. And I do like this add-on. However, I do think there's an add-on that does its job slightly better. And for the next add-on in the next tier, acceptable tier, in which I consider add-ons to be pretty good. Some of them are a bit niche, but you know what? You can't complain with them. First of all is Cloak of Invisibility, giving you 20 seconds of undetectable when you have all 4 spells on cooldown. This add-on was quote-unquote nerfed because it doesn't proc at the beginning of the game anymore, but this add-on is still nice. It lets you catch up on survivors when you're at your weakest. It gives you a little something extra in your toolkit. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of it because I never proc it in my normal gameplay, and I don't like wasting spells to get this add-on effect, but a lot of my friends and a lot of Vecnas I know have gotten really good results with this add-on. It just gives you undetectable. It lets you sneak up on survivors. Vecna's already a pretty quiet killer if you're not actively swapping your spells, so having undetectable is never a bad thing. And especially on some maps, it can really make a difference, like on indoor maps, on maps where it's hard to see. Having undetectable and getting even a couple hits per game can make a difference. If you have success with Cloak of Invisibility, then of course run it. And just in my opinion, it's not the greatest because a lot of the time, if you're managing your spells and not really spamming them, you don't tend to get results with the add-on. And if you have to waste spells to get the effect, like just using Mage Hand randomly, in my opinion, that's not really good spell usage, and you could have Mage Hand, and you lose the opportunity to have Mage Hand for a situation in which you really need it. Overall, pretty nice, but it does kind of require a certain playstyle, and that certain playstyle I'm not really a fan of. But if you are, you know, run the add-on. It's actually quite good for that. All right, next add-on up on our list is Glass Eye. Now, I actually think this add-on is quite slept on. Dispelling Sphere already is pretty big and pretty fast. This just makes it bigger and faster. Now, I like this because with the 15%, since the orb is already so fast, it actually moves even faster than compared to before because it's percentage based. And I think that makes it so much easier to use in Chase. It's already pretty easy to use in Chase, but also to get info. And especially when the survivor has one of the strongest items, which is the Dispelling Sphere one, it makes it harder to dodge, and it leads to a lot of survivors miscalculating the distance they need to run, which I honestly find pretty valuable. This add-on is also pretty good with Vorpal Sword, which we'll talk about in a bit, but overall, it just buffs Sphere. You're going to be using Sphere a lot. There's not really much to talk about. It just makes it better. All right, next is an add-on that I didn't expect to like so much. Cloak of Elvenkind. Cloak of Elvenkind reduces your terror radius by 22 meters while flying. Now, this add-on was complete dog shit before since it was 8 meters, but now that it's 22 meters, it's actually okay. I know Vecna is really loud during fly, and that makes it really hard to sneak up on survivors, but any amount of distance you get from the survivor not knowing you're there is invaluable, and especially because now it's on a 20-second cooldown and it's really fast, you're going to be getting a lot more use out of this add-on, and by the merit of that, I think it's pretty good. Now, it's not the most strong effect, but it procs so much. It genuinely procs so much, and it still confuses survivors. Whenever I run this add-on, survivors still stay on gens when I'm flying directly at them. Even though Vecna's pretty loud during his fly, he's not that loud. You're still gonna get like within maybe 20 meters of the survivor before they realize, oh shit, Vecna's nearby, I should probably freak out. And you can actually start your fly 32 meters away from the survivor and catch up now, because fly is much faster and has a much longer duration. Overall, I like this add-on. It's definitely a very just slap on and forget about it sometimes, but you can actively play towards it and get some pretty sneaky flies, so I'm a fan. Now coming up next is Dragon Tooth Dagger. This provides the hemorrhage and mangled status effect for 60 seconds whenever you M1 a survivor with a magic item. I'm not a fan of this add-on personally, but the duration does make it super nice, especially because it's basically sloppy with 20 extra seconds, or 20 less seconds. A lot of survivors are going to have at least one magic item, and this basically just hemorrhages them, mangles them. If you need to leave them for whatever reason, it's going to take longer for them to heal. We all know how fast healing is in this day and age. This just makes it slightly harder to heal. Yeah, you might not get the full effect if you down someone and then hook them, because it might take too long, but sometimes, especially now that it's 60 seconds instead of 45 seconds, a bit of it will bleed into the heal time. And if you hit someone, obviously they can't heal right away now. So if you come back to them later, then they're going to be injured. And, you know, getting an injured survivor, especially flying on top of an injured survivor, it's so much better. It's like your Kaneki. You're just, yeah, and then you go on top of a survivor. You know how it is. You know how having mobility and being injured against a mobility killer is. It's better than it was before. And certainly compared to his other add-ons, I feel like it does more. That's just my personal take. I still don't like this add-on. I really think it should be at least 70 seconds, but based on how easy it is to proc, I think it's at a fine spot. Now, second to last is Pearl of Power. And it mostly has the same talking points as Ring of Spell Storing, except it's 2 seconds instead of 1 second. So it's going to be useful in a lot more applications, especially when you're flying on top of someone and then hitting them. You get 2 seconds off of fly, which basically makes you like have fly instantly. I think 2 seconds makes a lot more of a difference than 1 second. It does rely on you getting M1s, but honestly, I think the fact that it gives you 2 seconds back just kind of makes up for it. I mean, yes, it's only 2 seconds on the spell you have off cooldown, but especially because you're going to have a lot of spells off cooldown, especially if you're getting those M1s because, you know, you're using your spells, it'll just help you have them faster. 2 seconds is a bigger number than 1, so that's why it's so much higher. I can definitely see a case for it being a little weaker, depending on how many M1s you get, but I think it's acceptable to run. I think if I had to only run this add-on, I wouldn't be too miffed. Now, last but not least, an acceptable is Boots of Speed, the better Mage Hand's item or add-on that I was talking about. Boots of Speed gives you 3% haste for 2 seconds after you use Mage Hand. Clean and simple. Distance is really important with Mage Hand, so when you Mage Hand and you get haste, that's pretty good. If you ever used Rapid Brutality and used Mage Hand, it feels so powerful. And that's why I like Boots so much. It lets you use Mage Hand in more situations that would net you 100% M1. If you use Mage Hand, you need to be if you use Mage Hand as a filler, you need to be 1, close to the survivor, and 2, you need to be 1, close to the survivor, and second of all, far enough away from the pallet to where you don't have to sit in place. Now, this add-on lets you start Mage Hand from a lot further and catch up. It gives you a tiny bit of distance, which especially if you're using the Mage Hand extension technique that I talked about earlier, it just makes playing around fillers so much easier, which Vecna does already kind of struggle with. So it basically just enables his Mage Hand, and Mage Hand, let's be honest, kind of needs it, especially if you're pallet holding, because a greeting survivor is a pesky survivor. And if you're able to more reliably shut that down, then you're going to be a powerful Lich, let me tell you. Going into the top picks, to an add-on that I believe has kind of fallen off, is the Bag of Holding. Now, why do I think Bag of Holding has fallen off? Well, first of all, a couple of his other add-ons were buffed, and I believe are better. But second of all, I don't think the Mimic is as useful as people make it out to be. I think a lot of the time, survivors should really not focus on magic items and just focus on getting gens. I think magic items as a whole are kind of over importantized. Like, of course, if you're like seeing a chest and it's on your way, you might as well grab the chest. But going around, running around, getting your quote unquote optimal loadout, that just wastes so much time when you can be doing gens for items that really aren't that good, especially with Dispelling Sphere being buffed, you're going to have them dispelled and chase a lot of the time. So in my opinion, the items are still a bit overrated, but people still get them and they're still good. So that's why I think this add-on is at a top pick, because it's very passive. It punishes survivors for getting items, and it puts less chests in the trial, because one of them is going to be Mimic now, or two of them. It adds one. So there's one less chest constantly dispensing items and potentially a Vecna artifact, which I think is very good. Not as good as I once thought it was, but certainly good. Now, next up, and our number 5 spot is Staff of Withering. They actually buffed Staff of Withering, which is a bit crazy because I think it's really good. It causes the exhausted status effect for 30 seconds after using Dispelling Sphere. If you know what exhaustion the survivors have, this completely shuts it down. And even if you don't, you're going to be using Dispelling Sphere before you chase people anyways, so it'll disable whatever the exhaustion they have. This might be a bit difficult with Sprint Burst, but with others like Lithe, like Balanced, like, I don't know, Smash Hit, Overcome, do people still use those perks? It helps a lot. It certainly helps a lot, especially because Vecna struggles particularly against exhaustions, because yeah, you can fly after them, but also if they exhaustion straight to a resource, then yeah, you can fly to them, but then they're going to vault the window and you're going to be like, oh no! Oh no, I can't catch up to the survivor. Not if you Dispelling Sphere, and especially if you know what exhaustions they have, you can use Dispelling Sphere to kind of bait them into going for those exhaustions. Like if you see someone going up a cliff and you know they have balance, you can throw Dispelling Sphere, and then when they drop down, oh my god, their balance isn't working. And then, you know, they go, yeah, ooh, and then they get stumbled, and then you go, boop, M1. This add-on is just good. It adds something onto Dispelling Sphere, which you're using during chases anyways, and it shuts down one of the strongest survivor category of perks in the game. Like, exhaustions are stupidly strong, I'm gonna be honest. So this add-on just serves to remedy that. And I'm not the biggest fan of anti-exhaustion add-ons and perks, but I think certainly if you're gonna run one, this is your best option. Now, last in the top pick is an add-on that has soared, pun very intended, and that is Raven's Feather. Fly is just insane right now. Fly is just crazy. You go so fast, you go so far. Adding 0.5 seconds, it feels like a no-brainer. Now, a lot of this doesn't help you if you're canceling Fly early, but for map mobility, this add-on adds up a lot over the duration of a trial. 0.5 seconds, it's like about half. You go about half of Shack, but that's still half of Shack. Especially if you're using it for map mobility, that's still seconds that you're saving. And I think those seconds are very valuable, especially because it helps you defend better. It helps you chase survivors that are far away better. It helps you patrol areas better. It just helps. More mobility is always good, okay? Mobility is very strong in Dead by Daylight, and I think Raven Feather is no exception. Yes, it doesn't help you if you cancel Fly early, but if you're canceling Fly early, you usually have a good reason. And just for that, I think Raven Feather is top tier, and I think you should run it more. It feels really good. I really do feel it whenever I'm running perkless, and I don't know, I think it's worth it. I think the extra mobility definitely helps. All right, now we're going into Vecna's Grand Arsenal, and you might have noticed that both Eries are still on the table. Let's just get this out of the way now. Vorpal Sword is the worst Eerie in my opinion, but it does effectively buff Vecna, believe it or not. Lifting pallets is already very risky, especially because it's a lot more consistent for the survivor to just drop the pallet back on you. Vorpal Sword kind of gives it a new playstyle where instead of directly playing around pallets, you let them be dropped and they're used as traps. Because if a survivor drops a pallet and then another survivor tries to go vault that pallet, you can just block it off and then break it. It turns dropping pallets into a sort of liability, and it greatly reduces the amount of 50-50s that Vecna has to play, because you can just break the pallet when the survivor is near. It's like kind of like the remote party break from the anniversary, except it doesn't activate as quickly, so you're not really camping it, but also you can stop survivors from vaulting the pallet, which I think is super strong. And they can't just revault either, because, you know, obviously it's getting broken. And that's not even talking about the Dispelling Sphere portion. The Dispelling Sphere portion is actually pretty good. It lets you keep survivors injured, and especially when you're when a survivor unhooks, that survivor is especially the survivor that they unhooked is especially vulnerable. So if you can keep them injured, especially if you're running hemorrhage, because if they're mid-heal, you can actually cancel the heal and all the healing progress will go down. This add-on lets you snowball. It lets you keep your pressure, stop heals. Especially with aura reading, you can catch a lot of survivors off guard. And the trap playstyle just, it's good. It's really good. Sure, he is worse if you need to lift the pallet, especially against god pallets, which you can no longer lift, it does kind of suck, but it does give the survivors a false sense of security, thinking that later they can use the pallet when Vecna can just break it remotely, and now they're trapped. Now this add-on does kind of get countered by any means necessary, but who's running any means necessary? So in my opinion, top 3. Now the second best add-on, in my opinion, is by far Robe of Eyes. Robe of Eyes is insane now. Not only did they buff the proc by 1 second, so it's now 4 seconds, it now works even more because they also buffed Vecna's spell cooldowns, reducing them, making it so that Robe of Eyes is active close to all the time. Not close to all the time, but you know what I mean. The amount of info this add-on can provide is incredible. At the beginning of the game, if you cast spells and use Dispelling Sphere or something, if anybody's near the item chest, which they usually are going to be because they spawn near them, and survivors have a big tendency of gravitating towards them towards the beginning because they see their auras, you just get free aura off the spot. And just anytime during the game where you're casting spells, which is all the time, by the way, you're going to be getting auras from across the map, close to you, even in loops sometimes if the chest is in the loop. And now that they've buffed Fly, you're able to capitalize on the information way more, which I think is a very valuable part. You're just able to, when we scan survivors, since Fly goes so much further, you're able to fly up to the survivor rather than before, where you might have stopped short, and pressure the survivor, especially if they're in a bad spot, which chests are usually pretty out in the open, so it is more than likely that the survivor's in a bad spot. This add-on just provides so much info, so much utility. It basically never lets the survivors out of your sights. And especially if you're casting Dispelling Sphere, you can scan multiple areas at the same time. Every chest will always be scanned no matter what spell you're casting. In chase, out of chase, using Dispelling Sphere at a generator, flying. One time I was flying towards a generator when on the aura, I saw slightly to my left a crouching Yoichi, and I did a 90-degree turn. I flew on top of him and I smacked him. That was one of the most satisfying moments ever. And I really do think this add-on is really good, and I would recommend trying it. Now, to everybody's surprise, I know, Book of Vile Darkness S tier. Oh my god, it's S tier. Why is it S tier? So you know how Vecna has a lot of text to be able to hit his skeletons against vigilant survivors? Why would you need to do that when you can just use Book? One of the main counterplays of Flight of the Damned is crouching them, obviously. And this add-on makes it so you can't crouch them. Hooray! Now, 2 seconds is not a lot of 2 skeletons is not a lot of skeletons. 3 skeletons is a lot of skeletons. So you're basically always going to want to combo these add-ons together. Just because Book of Vile Darkness, it's not bad without Ornate Horn, but it's a lot easier to dodge. With Ornate Horn, it's borderline unfair, in my opinion. Instas are uncrouchable. You can actually snipe people. Yeah, mostly instas are uncrouchable, which I think is the main valuable part. You don't have to rely on elevation. You don't have to rely on spancling. You don't have to rely on sniping survivors. It makes the skeletons a lot easier to use, and honestly more usable in a lot more situations. And that's not even mentioning the fly part. The fly bamboozle is not a weak effect at all. You can just straight up shut down main buildings, and you also don't have to worry about the survivor vaulting towards you after you fly through a window, because you just block the window. It completely blocks off that mind game unless the survivor vaults really early. But in that case, I guess you got outplayed. But still, a second of bamboozle when you fly through a window. You can shut down Shack. You can shut down Macmillan main buildings. You can shut down Garden of Joy. You can shut down, let's be honest, what main building doesn't have a ridiculous window at this point? It just does so much, and it adds so much lethality to Vecna that if you're like truly sweating with Vecna in like a win streak, I think you should run this add-on. This add-on, both of his Eries actually have a really, they play very differently, and they definitely have a bit of a skill ceiling and skill floor, but once you reach that, they're just so powerful and so strong. Personally, I don't run these add-ons because I adore Vecna's base kit, but if I were playing 100% for the sweat and 100% for the wins, first of all, I wouldn't be playing Vecna. But if I was on Vecna, I would definitely be running Book. It's just so unbelievably strong. It's almost in a league of its own. I might as well make another tier above this. But it's just so strong. It's so strong. It reduces the amount of counterplay. It makes you more lethal. It lets you shut down places a lot more effectively. It deserves its top spot, in my opinion. So there's the tier list. Screenshot it, snip it, NFT it, put it on Twitter. If you can beat me to it. monetize it, set it as your wallpaper at this point. I don't care. But do regard that this is my opinion at the end of the day, and I tried to be objective, but I think my biases might have shown a little bit, and no two Vecna players' opinions are the same. If you find success with an add-on that's lower down, keep using it. It might be S tier for you. These are just add-ons that work for me and that I think are good personally, in general. So of course, if you have different opinions, again, please let me know in the comment section. I love arguing. And yeah, have your own opinions, make your own tier list. That's the amazing thing about Vecna, in my opinion. So many people have so many different opinions about Vecna, and they're all correct to an extent. And with that, though, I will see you later, because I have to shut up now because my sister is sleeping. Subscribe for more content once per year whenever I remember how to click the record button, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.